In the first video, we did resources for studying Yahudyath. We talked about all of the books and information you could get. I decided to do this again under learning Yahudyath, and I wanted to pare down the list a little bit. So why don't we begin? All right, before we even get into the actual list, I wanted to talk about the mindset. First, you need to ask yourself, what's the reason you want to learn scripture? Is it because you want to learn the truth, or are you just trying to confirm what you already know? If that's the case, then you don't need this channel. You can go on and confirm what you already know, and that's not seeking the truth. But if you are seeking the truth, please continue to follow along with us. Another thing that I wanted to talk about as far as your mindset is getting rid of in the pew mindset. That mindset is where you once a week go to your local house of worship. You meet and greet your fellow parishioners. You sit in your seats. You follow along with the pastor for whatever scripture it is for that week. You sing some songs, you give your money, you say a prayer, and then you leave for a week without ever thinking about how what was read actually applies to you, or even if it was accurate. You are pretty much doing an automatic type of worship where it's just mindless and it's routine and it's a ritual. That mindset you have to get rid of. You have to get rid of to learn what scripture is really saying. Change. And it goes hand in hand with the, stop. You have to expect to research. You are expected to look for the truth. Actively look for the truth. You are going to research everything that's presented to you, everything that you read in scripture. You're expected to prove Yahuwah. And there's a verse that says that, but I don't have that on the top of my head right now. But he wants you to prove his word, to try it out. And so you should expect to actively look for answers and not just accept the answers that are given to you from whomever, whether it's me or a pastor or anyone. The last thing is to actively think about what is being told to you, what you're researching, and along with that, to unlearn what you've already learned in your former places of worship, whether you were Christian, whether you were Jewish, whether you were Catholic, whether you were, Islam. You need to actively think about what you're currently researching and searching for the truth, and then you need to unlearn what you have been taught, because there are many things that are not correct, like the Old Testament was done away with and everything is by so-called grace. So those are some things that you need to think about before we move further. All right, so on to the resource list. When I was compiling the list for this resource video, to pare down the list. The first one was very extensive terms. There were places you could look for resources, and I kind of wanted to bare actually need. I know that through my search in finding the truth of scripture over the years, I know I have spent over $20,000 in books, and by the end of everything, I have thrown away 2/3 of them. Buying books for scripture is big business. It's billions of dollars a year, and I want to try to avoid that. Not everyone has those resources. And I wanted to just keep it very basic and give you just the essentials. So this list, there are some new additions. A lot of it is the same, but it is very, very sparse compared to the other video. You can always look at the first video to get those resources. So let's start with the source. And that source is Yahuwah himself. He is your number one and only source. From him comes everything. Look with me in this script, 19 verse 5. That is Exodus for those who don't know. Now, therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed and keep my covenant, then you shall be a particular treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. This scripture says, and there's many others, you can just look up the term obey my voice, where Yahuwah is constantly telling his people to listen to him first and follow his covenant. But his voice, listening to what he has to say, understanding it, perceiving it, and then doing it, that is more important than even following the covenant. There are many times that he will tell you to do things that are what I term off the book, that apply to your life today. I've had a couple of times things as mundane as go get some window film to cover my basement, to something more profound like to withdraw money from my account before my account was taken over by a family member. And I listened to him. There was one case that I didn't, and I regretted it. So the point is that you have to listen to Yahuwah's voice first. Resource is Hebrew Word Pictures. This hasn't changed from the first list. It's still the best book that can tell you about pictograph and paleo-Hebrew and what happened to it over time. I have not seen a book better than this one, and I would suggest that you go out and get that one. I still have mine. I don't use it, but I still have it, and it's a great resource. The second essential resource would be a Strong's exhaustive concordance of scripture. All right. This is not the best concordance or lexicon out there, but because it's easy to follow, it's easy to understand, it has an easy number system. That's why I have always recommended it. Now, if you're more sophisticated and you have other ones that you use, that's fine. But for a beginner, this is the best one. As always, you need a scripture book. I used to recommend certain books, but again, in keeping with trying to keep costs low for people all over the earth, I suggest that you start with what you have, whether it's, a scripture book your grandmother gave you, unless it's something that's drastically different from scriptures, like maybe, the Quran or something. I would stick with what you have. The last essential resource that I recommend is this book, The Manners and Customs of the Bible by James Freeman. Because society then is so drastically different than society now, I suggest you do that. He follows along with scripture, and he tells you different customs that you're not necessarily going to pick up when you're reading scripture. So that's also a really good resource. And those are the 4 essential ones. So again, the 4 essential books are Hebrew Word Pictures by Frank T. Seekins. The second one is Strong's Exhaustive Concordance by James Strong. The third one is your very own scripture book. And the fourth one is Manners and Customs of the Bible by James Freeman. All right. Online resources. So let's talk about that. So the best scripture / concordance resource online is the same, blueletterbible.org. It follows Strong's. It has a lot of resources that you can use. And I suggest that that's probably the first one. The second one is a new one. That's YHUHderek, YHUHderek.com. Look that up. That has plenty of color coordinated scriptures. Now, as far as the history of words and languages, you need to look up. The first one is omniglot.com. The second one is ancientscripts.com. To look up the etymology of a word, etimonline.com, and also just to look up the rates is dictionary.com, and there's a tab up top for the thesaurus. So now let's look at our online book sources, okay? And these are places where you can get books for free online. The first one is archive.org. The second one is forgottenbooks.com. The third one is books.google.com. And the last one is amazon.com. If you're a Prime member, you can use books on Amazon. Or if you have a Kindle, I believe it's Kindle, you can also download books if that's what you like. Forgotten Books, you may have to have a small monthly fee to get the entire book, but you can get a free one with some of the information missing. Now let's talk about artifacts, because I believe that's important for people to understand, where scripture comes from. So here are some websites for artifacts. The first one is La Malak, LMLK.com. That is Hebrew for La Malak, meaning to the king or for the king. The second one, and this is for writing, deadseascrolls.org.il, which is for Israel. And then the last one is kchansen.com. Lamelech and KC Hansen will actually show you seals written in paleo-Hebrew. Dead Sea Scrolls will show you the scriptures that were written. And there's paleo scriptures on there too. Now, specific artifacts so you can see the writing in stone. The first one is Wadi al-Hol. That's the first one. That is pictograph Hebrew. The second one is the Zayit Abbasederi. I can't pronounce that. That's also a pictograph. The third one is Jehoash inscription. And the fourth one is the Gezer calendar. Those two are actual paleo-Hebrew, what's called paleo-Hebrew, or more correctly, Yahudyath writing. So that pretty much sums up the list. Again, I wanted to keep it concise. Here are some subjects that I did not talk about that were in the first one. Why I prefer printed books versus digital ones. I took that out. You can either go back to look at that if you want, or we could talk about it in another, maybe a webinar. Also, cross-referencing scriptures. I usually take a very old scripture book and cross-reference with a more modern one to make sure that the interpretation has stayed consistent, and I can tell you that it hasn't. But I want to make sure that it's correct. And then lastly, using pre-1880 concordance or lexicons. There's a reason for that. That is because they decided to go with the no vowel, that the claim that Hebrew had no vowels starting around that date. And so you want to try and find books before that date. Now we can talk about all these things maybe in a separate video or maybe even a webinar. If you guys are interested in that, if I get 25 requests, or you know what, we could even make it just an entire question and answer video. It's probably time for another one of those. And we can just include all of this in one webinar, all of these subjects plus any other questions that you might have. But if I get requests, 25 requests for that, we'll only need 25 people. Thank you for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one. Shalom to you and your family. All right. So please take a look at both channels, YHUHderek, YHUHderek 2, for more videos. Also, if you would like to email me, yahoo.com. We also have a website that I have recently updated, YHUHderek@us.com. And lastly, if you would like to donate to us, we could use the help at paypal.me/YHUHderek.